On the show today is Dr. Ira Gordon. Dr. Gordon is a veterinary radiation oncologist, researcher, entrepreneur, and has done a ton in the veterinary profession and animal health over the past 15 plus years. Chief Veterinary Officer with Vetcelerator and the co-founder of the VANE or Veterinary Angel Network for entrepreneurs. Last but not least, has co-founded and owned several veterinary practices, experience with other kind of just broad small business, and including CEO, COO, and medical director and director of innovation. Lots of different roles, lots of different experience. Welcome to the show, Dr. Gordon.
Thanks. I've been a big fan of what you've been doing for a while, so it's a pleasure to come on and have the chance to talk.
Absolutely. Appreciate the time. It feels like a lifetime ago that we were able to sit down and connect at VMX. Lots of stuff has happened. Doesn't feel like it's the same year. But with that, a lot of times when I kind of prep for a show, I want to kind of go back through social media, different posts, just things that are interesting to kind of dig into. One thing that I saw, it was an older post that you put out there, but I thought it was really interesting because you had some comments on it. So hopefully you'll be able to be like, oh yeah, I remember that. That was really good. It was profound, I thought, but it was something where you talked about the connection between confidence and being authentic, and how that had really changed for you over time. And I think that could be a good springboard into some of the other conversations that we're going to get into.
Thanks. I'm glad you brought that up. It's been a little while since maybe I've thought about it exactly that way, but I have often struggled with this notion that I have worried that I may come off as being inauthentic, even though I feel like I'm an open book and I'm as honest as I can be with people. And I struggled to sort of reconcile those two things. And part of it is in my nature, I think, as an introvert and just my general social awkwardness. And I had this realization when I was reading this book about the relationship between confidence and authenticity, and that when you're not confident and you're not trying to hide it with fake confidence, what people oftentimes perceive is that your sort of hesitation actually can come off as a lack of authenticity. And I thought that was really interesting because I have become more both competent and confident, I think, in, as I've gotten a little bit older, for good reasons. And I had started to wonder, is my sense that, my worry that I come off as being so inauthentic actually a little bit outdated, and is sort of coming from this time where I really lack confidence, and that was driving that. I think probably it's more complex than that, but that notion that when you're just starting at something, and I think about just starting as a vet, and you're not having a lot of confidence as you make recommendations to clients and the like, may come off not only as a lack of confidence but as a lack of authenticity. And so I just found that to be a connection that I hadn't previously made, and was excited to sort of share with other people.
So the term that comes up when I see that is when people will talk about when they're new to something or younger, the fake it till you make it, right? What are your thoughts on that term?
It makes me really uncomfortable.
Yeah, same.
I think that it feels like a good way to land yourself in a lot of trouble, to, pretend that you know things that you don't know. And that when you don't know things, being upfront about what you do know, about your thought process, and how you arrive at the best answer to a question or a problem seems like the right thing. But what I do like about the fake it till you make it sentiment is the notion that, we all kind of, well, I don't know about we all, I think many people struggle with this notion that even when you're really good at something, you feel like you don't know enough, right? It's one of these things that difficult to connect. But the more you know about something, the more you also realize you don't know about that topic. And so you're always going to feel like you're not really an expert. And I've taken the path of becoming a specialist in veterinary radiation oncology. So this is a specialty that, when I joined it, and I think now has roughly 100 people in the world, essentially. And so, objectively, I should be able to look at that and say, I am probably I should be one of the 100 smartest people in the world when it comes to this one specific topic, right? And in some ways, I think that's almost what it's taken for me to kind of reach this point of confidence when I say, you know what? Like, I see cases and get asked things about radiation that I don't know the answer to, but having that objective knowledge that there's really not very many people that could possibly know more about this than me helps me to sort of have the confidence in just saying, here's what I know. And here's my basis for giving you an answer to this question or giving you a recommendation for your pet, with the knowledge that there's a lot of things that I still don't know despite my expertise.
Yep. So the idea of like, as you learn more, the more you realize you don't know, is that like Dunning-Kruger effect. And so
Yeah.
I think it's so interesting where it plays out. It's not just vet med, it's everything in like life where people learn about something new and they're like, they know a ton. And it's like, oh, if you know someone in that space that maybe isn't quite as vocal, they probably know a lot more. They just know what they don't know. So they maybe aren't quite as, verbose on explaining certain things. We're like, I still might not know. Right. The other thing that you just brought up, being one of 100, and what I've seen occasionally, and occasionally maybe more often than not, is within vet med, anytime that a veterinarian is going to do something, and let's say it's not just in the clinical work, and sometimes even within the clinical work, it is titles and titles. Like, I've talked to lots of people and they have like so many letters after their name for all these things that they've done. Right. And it's a similar thing where, you want to build up the knowledge base and like the certificates and the diplomas and the different things, because it's a social proof of like, look, I've made it, I'm smart, and I have the answers to some of these things. But yet, even internally, if we're all honest with ourselves, again, the universe is vast. You're not going to know everything, even about the topic that maybe you've spent your entire life digging into. So I think there is some humility that has to come, and especially some of the smartest people that I know, like, they are the most humble, and that's pretty special.
Yeah, it's a really good point. I have developed a love of cognitive biases as well. But reflecting on what you're just saying, I think I still struggle with it. I have developed this love of entrepreneurship and business, and every once in a while, at least a couple times a year, I sort of get this idea in my head of like, wouldn't it be a good idea to go get some actual educational training in business, like a master's in business? And then I explore that for a little bit and realize I really don't have time to do it, and talk to people about it, and they say, well, what are you hoping to get out of that you haven't gotten out of your experiences actually
Yeah.
running businesses and being in business? And I usually come up with an answer, but yeah, it's that same thing of feeling like, despite my experience in business, there's always a business problem that you don't know the answer to, right? And this hope that, well, if only I had, you know more people that had taught me and training and qualifications, then I'd be more capable of coming up with better answers to those questions.
Yeah, I know a really bright, intelligent, smart veterinarian that went back to get business degree, MBA, and was like, "Yeah, I'm almost done, but I don't think it's exactly what I thought it was going to be, and I've learned more like in practice and managing people and all this other stuff." Like, yep, I hear that a lot. So it's interesting um, that it's so hard to replicate real world experience. You can read, and I've said this in talks before, whether it's to veterinary students or people that want to, be a practice owner. You can read all the books, listen to all the podcasts, do all the things, and you can be 70 some years old and then just had your entire life to learn about business. If you've never done it, the person that's ran a clinic for a year is probably going to know more. You just have to sometimes get your hands dirty and like go through it and live that life, and you are going to figure some things out. The goal would be, it's not either or. It's like you get some and you keep learning and you get better as you go. But I want to parlay that into your kind of story and journey. So you've sold two different businesses, have gone through that experience. Maybe, I guess, give us the overview of what those businesses were, how you thought about it, and then I think the other thing that's really unique is, what happens after, and what did that spark for you?
Yeah, let me do my best to kind of walk you through that. So the first business that I started as actually as a vet student with a couple of my classmates. Was a company that became what's called Vet Prep, which is an online licensure prep course for veterinarians. Really, I had never sought out to be a business person or an entrepreneur. I sought out to be a veterinarian that took care of animals, but identified that it really seemed unfair that veterinarians didn't have the types of resources that med students and others had to prepare for their board exam. And my best friend one day when we were studying just said, you know what, if nobody else cares about veterinarians, like maybe we should do something for them. And it's like, wow, what a cool way of thinking about that, right? So we got to it. And of course, we underestimated what that actually meant, but ultimately developed a product that we thought was going to help people. And we're just super fortunate to be in the right place and right time. And it seemed like almost immediately everybody started signing up to use this course that we created. And what started as hey, let's just put something out there and hopefully one day somebody finds this and it's helpful to them, became a big responsibility to support thousands of users that were signing up to and really relying on our product to help them with this important event in their lives. So that was my first business, and we ran that for about 15 years. We actually grew it to help a number of other healthcare professionals. I started a innovation competition for vet students as part of that business as well, and did a number of other things there. My other business was a veterinary practice business. So along with a partner, I opened a veterinary cancer center that we grew to be several oncology clinics in the Virginia, sort of Washington, D.C. area, and was there for about 10 years, and ultimately sold both businesses. We sold the vet clinics first while I was still running the test prep business. And, my recollection of that is, the deal closed and nothing really changed. Like I still went to the same office every day and saw the same people. Still was essentially the leader of that group as the medical director instead of the owner now. And the thing that was the most different is all of a sudden I had all this help. Like it wasn't all on me. Not all of the stresses were on me. Not all of the decisions were on me. There were people to do things for me, like, market the practice and help with getting us the best prices on things and all those things. And it was really neat. And unfortunately, in my case, I really liked the people that I was working with at the company that we sold to. It's why we chose them. And so it really didn't feel like this big loss. It was almost more of an addition, although certainly, did have this sense that, it wasn't just mine anymore. It reminded my partners. And that was really different when we sold Vet Prep. We sold that company to a continuing education business that helped other skilled professionals with similar types of problems. And that we sold with the idea that, we've been doing this for 15 years. We're really tied up in other things that we're doing, and we're just not, we're almost holding the business back at this point. And let's give this to somebody else and essentially walk away. And that's what we did. And so unlike with the practices, and it was almost like the practices made me even more ill prepared for that sale, because all of a sudden it's like, oh, wait a minute, like I don't do this anymore. Like all these people that I really cared about for a lot of years and worked with and like a lot, like they're not working for me anymore. We're still friends, but we aren't talking to each other all the time. And although people still associate me with that company and business, and it still makes me super happy when somebody finds out that, oh, you were one of the founders of Vet Prep. Like I use that and help me, thank you. Like I still take the credit for it. But all of a sudden everything changed, and it was a much bigger loss than I was really anticipating, which was pretty different. Ultimately, I think the story of my practice gets more complicated. So we sold to a small consolidator. And several years later, they sold to a very large consolidator. And because of that, the government decided to look at that transaction and commented that they wouldn't let that transaction go through unless our practices went someplace else. And so they went through a process called divestiture, which basically means sort of cut off from the initial business and sold to somebody else. And that was one of these decisions that it hurt a little bit, right? Like we had picked a specific group of people that we wanted to sell to, that we trusted, that we wanted to work with. And ultimately, like they had to make a decision to say, well, we have to cut you off. And it wasn't because they didn't like our practice, want our practice, or it wasn't for any reason really related to the benefit of our practice. It was for reasons related to just what was necessary for the larger business. And it was the right decision for the larger business. I can't complain. I don't think it was because anybody was a bad person. I know those people well, and I mean they genuinely felt really badly that this was an unanticipated consequence of the needs of the business. And it was kind of this, I don't know, sort of just clear realization for me that when you sell your business to a larger group, what you are giving up, even though I didn't feel it right away, is control and decisions around the business to somebody not only far away, but somebody that actually just has very, very different priorities than what you had for just the small businesses that were yours, right? And so decisions get made based on just different priorities than just what's best for your practice. And ultimately, like, I really don't have anything bad to say about the group that ultimately took over our practices. They're good people too, and they're doing the best they can. But it was kind of one of these changes that was really not desired, not in our best interest, if you will, and part of the reason why ultimately I moved on from those practices.
Yeah, that story just reminds me of hearing people that have, built a house or bought property, but then the property around them that they don't own, you don't control, right? And so maybe all of a sudden there's other people that build and there's other things that change, and it's like you can only control this, but you can't control the bigger, piece of that. And maybe that's a bad analogy, but just listening to that story, it's like all of a sudden the things that you were in control, and part of the reason that probably drew you to, being a business owner and being a partner in that was you can kind of dictate the direction. And when you give that up, even if you think you made the decision, you're like, hey, we know who we're with, we're good. It can still change into the future. So
I used to tell my partner Chand at the practices when things were tough at the business for one reason or another, and we sort of have this sense like why are we killing ourselves for this? And I said, there's a lot of things that are really, really hard about running a business, but the one thing that makes it all worthwhile is you get to pick all the people you work with. And that was always super important to me, is really liking the people that I work with. And so getting to pick them's a big part of that. And even when we sold our practice, like, we kind of picked those people, right? And ultimately, like, to all of a sudden have that choice go away, and the people that you work with are now chosen for you. And as I said, they're not bad people; they're good people too. But that was sort of a hardship, and especially because of that, I think, sentiment that I've grown to love about, that's what actually makes all this hard work worth it, is getting to sort of pick those people that you're working with to make decisions, and pick the people that you work with in the clinic. That was a big loss.
So after, that goes through and you talk about, then you kind of moved on or stepped away. What came next for you? What was kind of in your mind as the entrepreneur? You've done some things, sold some businesses, you've seen a lot. Where do you go from there?
Yeah, so I coincidentally, around the time some of these changes were happening with the practice, I met a friend of a friend who was working at this business that was developing, this really pretty comprehensive suite of resources and tools to help independent veterinary practices with a lot of the things that the consolidator that bought us helped us with. So to do things like help them with marketing and help them negotiate for the best sort of buying leverage they could have, and help with recruiting, and help with various aspects of facilities and phones and IT and all those things that, like, I never really wanted to do as a veterinary practice owner. Probably, frankly, wasn't that great at doing as a veterinary practice owner, and I was happy to have somebody else ultimately come do it. And they were doing this for independently owned practices, and really looking for a veterinarian to come join their leadership team. And I was like, man, this idea of, like, wouldn't it be cool if a practice could get, like, all those good things that I really loved getting when we sold our practice, without having to give up the things that I ultimately realized we had to give up in order to get them, namely sort of control about what happens to your practice, and having decisions made based on what's in the best interest of your practice and your people, was really a pretty compelling concept to me. And so that company's called Vetcelerator. That's where I am now as their chief veterinary officer.
You've made a comment, and I love this. I think it's part of why you're at Vetcelerator and the work that you do, is that you believe that independent veterinarians are the future of the profession. What gives you that confidence or stance? Because I've had lots of these conversations, and so many different people are like, the days are limited for a private practice owner. Like, just look, each year, more and more consolidation.
Yeah, this might be one of those quotes that ends up looking really incorrect in 10 or 20 years, but I feel like I've kind of seen this wave of, when I started in the profession, the vast majority of clinics were still independently owned, and there were a few kind of small startup consolidators that were getting started. And we've seen the pace of consolidation growing for almost my entire time in this profession. But we've now kind of hit this point where, it's almost, there's not a lot of practices left for them to buy up that they really want. The consolidators are starting to consolidate, which is what happened with my story that I just shared. I'm seeing over the past 5 years or so this new wave of people that want to own their own veterinary practice and keep them independent, right? And so I think that's exciting to see. I don't think business and consolidation is inherently bad, but I think there's something really valuable about having independent practice ownership, having veterinarians continue to own veterinary practices. I think that when people think about the veterinary profession, and I think most people hold our profession in pretty high esteem, and I would love to see it stay that way. I think it's because they know that the people that are running this profession and running these businesses are people that are doing this because they care about the health of animals and care about helping people take good care of their pets. And I think that that can still be the case in a corporate group, but it does get more complicated and it gets harder, and sort of layers of that message I think can get lost at times. And I just worry about seeing what's happened to some other healthcare professions in my time as well. My parents are both, they're not doctors, they're not medical doctors, they're doctors of optometry. Seeing what's happened to sort of that profession, as well as professions like doctors of pharmacy, that at one time, like they were like just widely viewed as the people that are the best caretakers of people's eyes, and the people that are best caretakers of the drugs that people take, and seeing that become increasingly just sort of like, oh, they're the guy that works at this big company's store, right? And they still may be really fantastic doctors, and many of them are, but that loss of independent practice ownership of business, of healthcare businesses like that, I think has not actually been to the overall benefit of those professions or those professionals. And so I'm hoping that veterinary medicine can be as great for the people that join this profession now and in 20 years as it has been to me, and for I think even the people that have joined this profession for the last 30, 40, 50 years would say it's one of the best professions you could be in. And we love it. And for the most part, people love us for being in it. And I hope that continues.
Hey, I love the positivity of being, this is a great profession, because I think there's sometimes too much negativity where people will be like, oh, I would never recommend, my kids or my nieces and nephews or different people to get into this profession. And it's like, man, that really hurts and stinks when you hear people that are in the profession doing the work that would say, yeah, don't come here. This isn't where you want to be. So I love it when there's folks that have done it, have had a lot of success, and are like, hey, this is a great place to be. And I do think there's a lot more positivity out there. I just think the negativity gets attention at times that maybe it shouldn't. I also agree with you on private practice stuff. So if it's wrong, I'll be right there next to you saying, yep. I endorse the quote. You've seen it in dentistry as well, where there's a lot of consolidation, and there's still a private practice element. There's consolidation there, but private practices are thriving. There's more people that want to own. And I do think there is a difference. So there's a guest that's been on the show. His name's Thad Miller. He has a company that does some like private practice transitions for both dentistry and vet med. And, on the dentistry side, really, really strong young dentists coming out. They want to own. Vet med, it's a little less, but it is interesting. And I do think that there's a lot of young veterinarians that want to own, and I've seen those people. But part of it might be who reaches out to me, who do I talk to? Is probably that subset anyways, and I'm getting less of folks that maybe don't want it, so I have to be careful there. But the question, so that was just, I guess, my comment. Question is, so you've seen optometry, you've seen pharmacy, vet med, dental. This idea of get big or get out. Why do you think structurally that is? Because it's even true for the hardware store on the corner, the grocery store. It's all these different things. Do you have any thoughts on that? I know it's like a bigger macro question.
Well, I think in the veterinary field, at least, I don't know that I could speak as much to the others. I think some of it was driven by, a bit of momentum around valuation of practices by consolidators. People oftentimes talk about valuation of practices based on multiples of earnings and the like. And, if you were going to buy a business that you were planning to run for the next 30 years, you might be willing to pay 5 or 6 times what it's earning right now because you're going to make that for the next 30 years and hopefully grow that business, right? But you can't pay 10 or 20 times what it's making right now, right? As a value for that business. But because of the consolidation sort of model of buying practices and actually increasing their, not only their value through efficiencies, but their multiple because of their size, they started sort of paying these big numbers for practices. And I think people started to get these offers, and they sort of have to look and say, hey, I started this practice because I love my community and I love the animals in my community and I want to help them. But this is sort of, an opportunity for me to actually be able to take care of my family and send my kids to college. And it would be almost irresponsible financially for them to say no to some of those offers, right?
Absolutely.
And so they're stuck in a little bit of a tough predicament where they may want to keep their clinic independent, but their associates can't reasonably afford to pay close to what some large group might be willing to offer, and they have to make a tough decision. It's also, it's an opportunity for them and value that they've created in a sense, and so it's complex, right? I think that was a piece of it. I think we're starting to see some of that market settle a little bit. We'll see what happens, but I think that that recognition, and this may be one of the good things about sort of corporations coming in, but that recognition that veterinary practices can actually be profitable. I think the people and the practices that I worked in, growing into the field, I bet you those practices were running at like 0 to less than 10% profit most of the time, and that's and owners were okay with that, right? But seeing that corporations can come in and run practices at 10 to 20% and higher profitability is a good thing for veterinarians to see and realize. Doesn't mean that's how everybody should run their practice, but I think that can make it that much more appealing to sort of think about independent practice ownership as a good opportunity. And I wanted to reflect on one other thing you mentioned, which was, is this a good profession or not, right? Or a great profession or not? I think it is definitely a great profession, but it is absolutely not an easy profession, right? And I think that is where things get tricky, right? It's not an easy profession because there's a lot of stress and a lot of pressure. There's potentially this pull to get drawn into things that are after hours and weekend things, and we feel like to be a great doctor we want to provide that to our clients, and we have to deal with tough situations like people that may not have the financial ability or otherwise willingness to pay for the things that we might think their pet needs or deserves. We have to sometimes deal with animosity over people wanting us to provide that care despite them not having the ability to pay for it. We Yeah, I mean, it is tough, and it is actually not. Despite being a great profession, it is not for everybody that loves animals. I think it's probably an easy statement to agree with, and I would say that I haven't really thought about this, but one of the things that is a topic of conversation now is kind of the um, relative explosion of sort of new veterinary schools and sort of seats in veterinary school, and the concern that could we actually go from having a workforce shortage to a surplus. But I think this may be a profession where the average sort of professional life expectancy isn't 30 or 40 years, and
Hmm.
my dad and my mom, like, they were optometrists for 30 or 40 years. Like, that's what they did. I was a practicing veterinarian for less than 15, right? I still do some locum work, and I will dabble. I haven't treated my last patient, but and a big part of that to me, I think, I know there was actually no profession I possibly could have chosen that I would want to do for 30 or 40 years. I don't think I knew that when I started all this, but I realize that about myself now. But I also think that when you look at professions like, like human oncologists, right? Like they have an average sort of professional window on average that's, it's less than 20 years. I think, people can't necessarily, well, some people can do this for 40 years and still love every single day that they go to work. But I think on average, potentially, like the sort of professional window for people may not be, as long as it was for a previous generation. So it's a great profession. I love it. I'm extremely proud to be associated with it, and I'm sure I always will be. But those would be some of my butts around that.
I think that's a really profound thought that I've never heard anyone say, but I completely agree with. In enough conversations that I've had with veterinarians, it makes sense. And
You
the cool,
see it a lot, right? Like there's
yeah,
there's a number of significant businesses that are sort of focused on, veterinarians don't want to all be in practice. They may want to be working for a telehealth company. They may want to just do relief so that they can have a bit more flexibility on their schedule, their mental sort of health bandwidth to be in practice all the time. They may want a flexible schedule, right? I think that, yeah, I mean, I hadn't really thought about it until I was just talking about it, but that notion that you can't necessarily apply the same math to the number of graduating vets and say, well, that means that 20, 30 years from now, there's going to be this many veterinarians, because the actual attrition rate, I think, is probably going up as well.
yeah. Huh. Anything else on practice ownership, the state of kind of the opportunity set there? Anything you'd want to share with like younger veterinarians that are like, I might want to be a practice owner? Because I do think we can kind of parlay a couple of these different topics into the work that you've done at VANE, but I don't want to leave it quite yet.
Yeah, I think, I mean, the message I would love to give to people is you can do it, right? Veterinarians either are or are become, or they become natural problem solvers, right? And essentially, that's what an entrepreneur is. Like, they're problem solvers. And you know, you see stories all the time and see veterinarians that they just kind of have to come up with crazy solutions to try to provide a positive outcome for a new problem or a new question. And the same thing is really true about starting a business. And we talked a little bit about, sort of imposter syndrome and the like before, and this notion of like, well, who am I to start a veterinary practice? Like, I don't know the first thing about it. Well, the good news is you actually know a lot about it. The other good news is, you're not the first one, and there are people that can help with most of the things that you might run into, whether that's, I need to find a building that's in a good area for a veterinary practice. I don't know how to build a veterinary clinic. I don't know how to, choose X, Y, or Z, or how to charge for things, or how to hire people. One of my, I'm going to digress if that's okay. One of my favorite stories when we started Vet Prep was we had grown that for a number of years, and we had like 85% of veterinary students were signing up for the course. It was going great, but it was almost like we didn't really know what to do next, right? And we kind of had a little bit of an idea that it would be cool to make a course for technicians, but we had now made it, that much further in our career, and we just weren't sure what to do. And we met with somebody that was actually a friend of my dad's, and we were talking to him about, is this a business we should potentially sell, even though like it's doing really well? And we were telling him about what we're doing, and he said, I bet I could help you sell this business, but I honestly don't understand why you guys want to sell it. I said, well, we just don't really, it's kind of done as good as it can do. Like, where do we go from here? And I said, well, is there anything else you guys would build if you could build anything? And I said, well, we kind of have this pretty neat software, and it's helping vets, and we would build a course for veterinary technicians. And he said, okay, why don't you do that? And we said, well, because we don't really have the time. And he said, well, why don't you hire somebody? And we said, well, because we don't really know anybody. And he said, why don't you place an ad? And we literally had never, the idea never dawned on us. Like we had one employee who's my brother-in-law, and we were just buddies from school that started this thing, and we just kind of viewed it as like we're doing this because we like each other and we get to do something cool. And this idea that like, oh, like placing an ad and hiring somebody, that sounds like really running a business, and we don't know how to do that, right? Like, no, we had been running a business. We do know how to do this, right? We were just afraid that like we were gonna no longer have this little kind of like friend circle, and we were all the people of the business were in the same little group. But we came to find out that like actually some of the people that we hired were like really awesome, and even more surprisingly, some of them ended up caring about the business as much as we cared about the business. Sometimes, maybe even if it's possible, more than we cared about the business, right? And I think I look back on it, I just think it was so funny that what was holding us back was this fear of like, yeah, we don't really know how to run a business, even though we were running a very successful business. We don't know how to run a business. We don't know how to hire people. We would be afraid to like hire a stranger because we don't know how to manage people. Like, you can figure these things out. You're not the first person to ever try to do these things, and I think a lot of vets they probably feel that way. Like, I don't know if I would have started a practice if I hadn't sort of been through this experience of kind of starting another business first. But I would just say like, you can do it. It isn't, you're not building something for the first time. There are people that can help you, and you're obviously smart, you know the field, and objectively, right, there's not that many people that can start a veterinary practice, but you're one of them.
Yep. I think that's a really nice extra bonus is like, there's not like every person in the world can come compete in your little subsector of business, because you need some prerequisites, right? You got to kind of have some things in place. So that is helpful. And I think on that kind of same line of thinking, starting a business and having tools and having new technology that is there to help support things is kind of what you all are doing at VANE, which is the Veterinary Angel Network for entrepreneurs, where you can find these opportunities that are coming in to help support veterinary medicine, make it better, to make it easier for private practice to thrive, right? To bring efficiencies. And that maybe that can also help with the kind of life cycle of how long a veterinarian can feel comfortable, contribute, but also like produce great care during their time, however long that is, whether it's a decade, 2 decades, half a decade.
Yeah.
What? Yeah, let's talk about VANE, I guess. If you can improve the health of an animal, you do it, right? Of course. That's what makes veterinarians special. You're mission driven. My friends at LifeLearn are the exact same way. For over 25 years, they've been partnering with you and your peers, providing affordable, customizable, online software solutions. These solutions save time, increase efficiency, and assist in managing all aspects of operations. Why? They want to help you improve your partnership with pet owners to improve pet health. LifeLearn has award-winning digital media solutions and are leading the pack as they've prioritized having extensive veterinary knowledge throughout their teams. That difference is seen, it's heard, and it's read by thousands of people across the country. Relax, grow, and thrive with LifeLearn. Click the link in the show notes for an exclusive offer to see how LifeLearn can allow you to get back to what you do best.
I'd love to tell you the story of how we started VANE, because it just ties into some things we were just talking about. So I told you about kind of this feeling I had after we sold Vet Prep about, oh man, like I didn't realize like all of a sudden I wasn't going to have like this really cool thing anymore, and it's this big loss. And I got a call from my friend Brian, probably a couple months after we sold Vet Prep, which was a couple years after we sold the practices. And he says, "Hey, how you doing?" I was like, "Well, pretty good. I have a little bit more time now, have a few less stresses on my shoulders. I think this was the right time and the right thing to do. But honestly, like, I kind of just feel like I'm just going into work like everybody else now. And I used to be doing like really cool stuff and building cool stuff. And don't get me wrong, like I love my job and it's important and I get to do awesome things at my job, but I just feel like I'm missing something, and I don't want to sort of lose this connection to innovation, animal health, and the like. And he's like, that's really interesting. He said, I've talked to a couple other people recently that have sold practices or been through something similar and had some similar sentiments. Like, let's start talking. And I said, okay, well, why not? And that sort of turned into, well, if all of us are kind of feeling this way, maybe there's more people that feel this way, and maybe we should do something about that. So I said, okay, like maybe we should create a group. And that went from, and what is this group going to do? Is it just going to be a bunch of old guys to get together and talk about animal health? Like, what are we actually going to do that might be impactful? And so that was sort of where this idea of making early stage investments in animal health businesses sort of came about, and this idea to start a angel investing network for animal health companies, or the Veterinary Angel Network for entrepreneurs, or VANE. And we started by inviting people in our network that had some interest, and have gradually seen that grow. We're about 3 years old now, have about 75 members, and the idea is just that. I mean, there's a lot of good people and good ideas going around in animal health to try to make things better for animals, better for veterinarians, better for the profession, all of the above. And it's really cool and it's really fun to hear about those things, to have the opportunity to give advice to people that are starting those kinds of ideas and businesses, and to potentially even kind of be on that journey with them a little bit by becoming an investor at the early stages of their business. And a little bit to my surprise, when we started to talk about this idea, I was like, I'm not an angel investor. Like, I've been very fortunate in my life to have a couple of businesses and sold them, but like I, I'm still working, right? Like, I am not at like a place where I can retire. Like, I don't have, you know, a bunch of, you know, extra money to be sort of gambling on startups. But this idea that you can make a pretty big impact by making some pretty small investments, and that actually, if you start to sort of think about early stage investment and think about it as opposed to making one investment, but sort of developing a small portfolio of investments, it starts to be a little bit more of a science and a little bit less like gambling. And, you shouldn't, you actually have a pretty good chance of making a return on that investment that could be comparable or better to the other things that people tend to do as relates to sort of investing and retirement planning and the like. And so that all started to just make a lot of sense and started to make it feel sort of more approachable for a regular guy like me.
Yeah, I love that. And the other cool thing is, as you do it, similar to what we talked about at the beginning, right? As you get experience, get more comfortable, confidence, you also then start to have companies that you've invested in, you get to know what they're doing. And then when a new company is coming out, it's like, oh, there's a really cool overlap, and like they're doing this and they're doing that. And like they can all come together and actually do some cool things jointly together. And I think that's a pretty unique angle to look at this as well. And it just helps you understand what's going on in the industry, and you can help hopefully avoid misallocations of capital. And I think especially, and again, I'll go on a slight tangent right now, with rates going up a little higher, it makes it a little harder for a lot of these companies to raise money. So hopefully there's better ideas that do have legit product market fit, that are solving a real issue, and not just, hey, this is an interesting idea, like, let's give it a shot because we can go borrow a bunch of money and kind of burn it for a while without having to make sure that there's something here that has merit at the end of it. So that's not necessarily in vet med, but that's more just VC in general, and just broader kind of tech adoption. So very cool.
It is really fun when kind of like arms of your life start to kind of like come together and help each other in some ways. So we at VANE, we made an investment in a company called Paw Print Oxygen, which provides an at-home sort of oxygen solution for pet owners that have pets that may become or are oxygen dependent. And then at Vetcelerator, I work with this fantastic practice owner, owns a urgent care clinic, and was looking to sort of host an event in our area and have some giveaways for regional vets. And I was like, oh, you should talk to Blake. Like, he has this really cool product so that if one of your clinics that refers to you has an oxygen dependent pet, they can't give them like a big cylinder of oxygen to take in their car, right? Like that's an explosive hazard. It's against the law. But he actually has these little oxygen tanks they're rated for that, and they could actually give that to a client, and they could send this oxygen dependent pet to your clinic while getting oxygen instead of feeling like, well, they're stuck because it's not safe for them to go anywhere. And so I made that connection to the two of them, and like extremely helpful for both of them. Like I get calls from both of them saying, "Oh, thanks so much for making this introduction. So helpful to my business, and just a great connection to make." And so that is a pretty fun thing about learning about new things that people are doing and working on, and sort of seeing where they might be able to kind of provide benefit to other things that are around the things that you're doing. And that's one of the cool things about, I still, I'm a veterinarian, I work in animal health, and I invest in animal health. I do it mostly because I think I know a little bit more about animal health than I do about Bitcoin, for example. But it also turns out that I do it because, I still care about animal health. I still work in animal health, and it's neat to sort of just build more connections there.
Yep, absolutely. And there's a famous investor. His name's Peter Lynch. He's written a bunch of books, but and Warren Buffett talks about it as well. Like if you have more knowledge of an industry, sometimes it can make you overconfident. So going back to that Dunning-Kruger, where you think you know more than you do, and you let ego get in the way and you do some dumb things. But a lot of times it can help you see the potential issues that are there and maybe avoid those big mistakes that someone that has a lot less industry knowledge would make. So yeah, definitely love that. What's something about VANE that maybe a lot of people don't know that you think they should know?
Um, I mean, it is one of the most interesting and impressive group of people to sort of be in a club with, because VANE is not actually a investment fund. It's what we call a network. We really we work collaboratively, and we function. It is kind of not more than a glorified club in some ways, and but it is a group of people that are just, they want to help. They want to sort of see innovation. They want to see, things improve in animal health and in the profession, and they want to be contributing. And so it's just a group of people that I'm just extremely proud to be associated with, and it's always fun to welcome new people that sort of see that as something they want to get involved into.
Perfect. Well, I typically allow guests to kind of share anything that maybe I haven't asked about on their heart and mind. Maybe we haven't even touched on it yet. Things that are going on, maybe things that you're excited about that you see. Anything that you want to touch on or discuss a little bit?
Oh my goodness, I should be more prepared for this question. We talked about so much already. I think that I don't have a great answer to your
Yeah.
question.
Well, okay, I'll parlay it into if you have a question for me. So typically, I'll always close episodes with allowing a guest to ask me any question they want. It can be serious, it can be obviously not serious, but it's me over here peppering you with questions and asking follow-ups, and I think it's nice to kind of turn that around a little bit.
Yeah. I think we talked a little bit about my experience having been through the sale of a couple of my own businesses, and I happen to know that you've been really forthcoming and sort of sharing your thoughts and feelings about making the decision to move away from one of yours, and that's in the works right now. And it sounds like that's probably going to be a little bit more like my experience with the test prep company, when you're passing it along and kind of stepping away from it. So yeah, I'm sort of curious about how you're feeling about that. Like, what do you think? I talked about how I sort of felt this big sense of loss when I realized I wasn't doing that anymore. Like, do you think you'll feel the same thing?
Yeah, and so it's been a little different with the way that it probably all came together or happened than the test prep, but yeah, I mean, I've been very blessed and fortunate to have a lot of really good relationships and people that I've gotten to know, and that's meaningful conversations that people don't share with a lot of other people or anyone, right? And so to then not really have a way to then say like, "Hey, by the way, I'm going to move," and it's just kind of like a abrupt change, it's difficult. And so I think for me, one of the big things mentally was being comfortable knowing that probably would happen, might happen, but I wasn't really sure when I began to have the conversations and push to make a change there. But yeah, I think that is hard because I think there's a lot of confusion where people might think certain things that aren't necessarily true. Like, oh, I think Isaiah thinks XYZ, and it's like, well, it might not be true, but I can't really communicate that very well. So one of the things I tried to do was just use the podcast and use social media to just let people know, like, hey, I care. It wasn't anything to do with like the work or these other things. Like there's other uh, reasons for why I made the decision that I made, and hopefully people can respect that. And I think most people have. They get it. They understand, especially those in vet med, when it's like it's time to make a change or something you need to do differently. I think especially within veterinary medicine, they understand that, and just the outpouring of feedback or messages, whether it was an Instagram DM or Facebook messages, because people might not have my personal cell phone or any of that stuff. Like it's been humbling, it's been cool, and it's like, okay, there was meaningful work done, and I do think I'll miss it, and I'm on to something different, also meaningful, but just different from that standpoint. So, yeah, it is harder, and I think there's some really good information from the Exit Planning Institute. So I took some like CE, additional learning stuff, just as we were joking earlier about all the different credentials and all that stuff. I think Financial Services has a bunch of weird, junky credentials as well. But one of them that I took that was meaningful was called the Certified Exit Planning Advisor. And the Exit Planning Institute is who ran it. And what they talk about is, you have business owners and people you work with, so much time, energy, mental thought went into that business. And then when it's done, they feel a little lost. They're like, well, what do I do? And I think for so many, especially Americans in general, like we tie a lot of our worth to what we do, because everyone asks like, oh, what do you do for a living? And trying to have like, what else do we do? Who am I as an individual outside of work? And I've talked about that a lot, but I think it's just important to continue to harp on is, yeah, you're a veterinarian, but you're also a lot of other things, and just make sure that you don't lose that, because if God forbid something happens and you can't practice veterinary medicine, like you don't want to be a shell of a person. So I think for me, it's just trying to continue to remember, like, you do lots of other things and you can still, have those relationships that you maybe used to have that was more professional. Like there's still private relationships that you can have with those people. And if you do care about them, you'll find ways to connect. So yeah, that's kind of the way I look at it.
Thanks. It's something I have started to think about a little bit too. I think I certainly not for the better, but I have tied up a lot of my like identity and sort of sense of self-worth, if you will, in the things that I've done professionally. And it's because I've loved them and I care about them.
Absolutely.
And I will always sort of, consider myself to be a part of them or associated with them in some way. But as I also sort of now think of myself as, a husband and a father to two growing kids, and, thinking about priorities and the fact that I'm not going to be doing the things that I'm doing now forever. Like, what is it that, is, you know, most meaningful and important, and where I want to be spending, my time, not only now, but in a few years and in 10 or 15 is hard when for my whole life, it's been, school, 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 training, profession, business. And, I'm not there yet, but sort of starting to get to that point of thinking about, what about when business isn't the most important thing anymore and work isn't the most important thing? What then? And certainly, know people that have really struggled with that. And I think that unless I'm more proactive about it, I'll be one of those people.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm trying to start to get ahead of a little bit by thinking about those things, and hopefully giving myself a smoother transition at some point.
Yeah, amen. I'm in the same situation. It's easy to say, it's hard to do. I know I need to do a better job at it as well, right? So it's thinking about, what do you say your priorities are, and then what do you actually do, and those sometimes are not the same thing. And that is really, um, it cuts deep when someone points that out, and you're like, good point. Like I need to do better at that. So,
Yeah, it's
but
it's not simple, right? These things are very complex. Like, certainly would say that my family and my kids are at the top of that list of priorities. But I spend more hours of my day working and thinking about my work than I do spending and doing things with them typically. And that's complex. I think, I do think that it's important for them to see that their mom and their dad, work hard and commit to things, and um, you know are doing these things, but you know don't want that to come at the expense of our relationships with them and the events in their lives that we want to be a part of and see and celebrate with them and all of that. And it's hard to have it all. Like, nobody quite figures out that perfect balance of those things. And maybe that shouldn't be the goal. But it feels like a constant struggle.
Yeah, I think it's just a constant process of checking in, weighing that out, having conversations with the people that you care about their opinions the most, the people that love you the most, that know you the best, and just making sure like you have some sort of true north that you can go back to and check in. So I'm sure you're doing a great job. I'm sure your kids will see that.
You know, I have as you've heard, like a few different things going on professionally. My wife's harder working than me and has even more going on. And we sometimes joke that, like, I mean, October is a great example. Like, one of us is going to be traveling, for 75% of the month. We actually have to coordinate our travel so we're not both gone at the same time for the kids. But that means, like, yeah, there's probably like only a handful of days in October where we're both going to see each other. We've had times where it's like, oh, maybe we'll see each other at the airport when you're coming in and I'm leaving, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that would seem to conflict with one of those things that I genuinely think is a priority, which is my family and that relationship. Right?
Yeah. Well, I think it's a great spot to kind of put a pin in things. Where should people reach out to connect with you if they have interest in Vetcelerator, VANE, some of the other stuff you're working on? Where would you send them?
Yeah, I'll send everybody to my personal address instead of giving a bunch of different ones for different places. But yeah, you can reach out to me by emails is typically best. That's Gordon, Gordon .372 @gmail.com.
Perfect. We'll have it in the show notes. Actually, I probably won't put an email in the show notes. I'm going to make people listen to the end and they can grab it and they can jot it down. And if they need it, they can just DM me and I'll make sure they get it. But Dr. Gordon, this was great. Really appreciate you and the time. And I know there's a lot to take away for people that listen. So
yeah, I hope so. It was fun to spend some time and great to connect on a few of these things. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Take care. Recruiting team members in your veterinary practice has never been this hard. You can either bury your head in the sand and hope it goes away or adapt. Enter Guardian Vets. By leveraging best-in-class technology, you can empower your staff and reduce their workload. Help reduce burnout. You also provide a better experience for your clients and patients, which you want to do as you serve them. The solutions Guardian Vets offers includes after-hours triage, virtual CSRs, that know your team and processes, telemedicine, and so much more. Become the employer of choice in your area by offering the best tools to position your team for success. Whether you're starting a de novo, clinic, multi-doctor, or multi-location, Guardian Vets can help you be more efficient and effective. Go to their website, guardianvets.com, click the Get Started button, then let them know that I sent you, right? Let them know the Vet Success Podcast sent you. Get 50% off your first month. Don't let another quarter or year happen before you start making changes because you know you need to. So talk to the Guardian Vets team today and implement a new solution. Have you ever walked into a space and thought, wow, this place is beautiful? There's a reason for that. Architecture has this innate ability to impact emotions and perceptions. My friends at Apex Design Build bring beautiful and functional spaces for veterinarians nationwide. Apex is a fourth-generation family-run company that is fully integrated from the design, architecture, and construction process. They help you mitigate risk, eliminate surprises, save time, save money, and reduce your efforts. Sounds great. Check out their amazing work and have access to their square footage calculator to help you plan out your expansion or new build. Click the link in the show notes for the exclusive offer and learn more about Apex Design Build. Why do banks seem to always be impersonal, slow to answer questions, or give you the runaround when you need money for your dreams? Enter Panacea Financial. Panacea Financial is a nationwide digital bank built for doctors by doctors. Whether you're a veterinarian in training, practice owner, or aspire to be a practice owner someday, Panacea Financial is a bank designed specifically for you. It was started by two doctors who were frustrated working with banks and so started their own to serve their community. With common sense lending guidelines and fast decisioning, they've helped doctors all across the country start, grow, or acquire their dream practice. Looking to buy into a practice, Panacea helps doctors with practice buy-in loans, and they are funded in a matter of days. If you're ready to join the thousands of doctors nationwide who have decided to get independence from traditional banks, visit panaceafinancial.com today to see how you can get your dream practice started. Panacea Financial is a division of Primis, member FDIC. Finding a job or finding a veterinarian shouldn't be a waste of time. Enter an Offer First. Paul Diaz and team have created something really special with Offer First. Some of my favorite reasons are as follows. Candidates and employers will both have values aligned on the first step, not the last. The sign-up process, quick and simple, no resume required. So if you're looking for a job but you aren't really sure, it's as easy as scrolling on Zillow for a home. And finally, if you have a great match, it's based on your each unique requirements, not random keywords. If you want to learn more, listen to episode 179 with Paul Diaz. We cover all of that. The other exclusive great thing that you're going to get from this ad read and from Paul is I convinced him to give an exclusive discount to listeners of this podcast. So for owners, you're getting a 20% discount on both the placement of any candidate, but also access to the platform. Use VSP if you go to Offer First, or the easiest way is a link in the show notes. So check it out. Associates, those looking for a job, same thing. Use the link in the show notes. Use VSP if you go directly to Offer First. But I will donate and Paul will donate to a veterinary nonprofit of your choosing. So each person that signs up gets a vote. Your votes actually count, which is incredible. And so I'll be reaching out. I will handle that. But there's going to be a donation made for any associate or any job seeker that adds on the platform. We want to make sure that not only does the platform help to make sure that you find a better fit, better culture, better role, but it's also doing good in veterinary medicine. Okay, so link in the show notes is going to take you to Offer First. It's going to automatically apply that, but also use code VSP if you go to Offer First directly. And Offer First is changing the game of veterinary recruiting. I want each and every one of you to benefit from it, so check them out today. All right, so there are a lot of great job postings that I want to get to. And so we're going to start off with Bayside Hospital for Animals. Great work-life balance in beautiful Fort Walton Beach, Florida. No weekends, Monday to Friday, 8 to 5, no on-call or emergencies. It's an appointment only here. Currently a 2.5 doctor practice, new owner in 2021, bringing some fresh life into the hospital. The new owner had been there for 6 years prior working, so definitely understands the team, the processes, and the community. Lots of investment in people and new equipment. ProSal is the pay structure. Far too many benefits for me to list. Email BaysideVet251 at Yahoo or call 850-864-1857. Join a thriving, growing small animal practice in Vermont on the Quebec border. Full-time ideal, part-time is considered. The idea is to start with yes with the team, patients and clients, and outdoorsmen or outdoor woman's paradise while being able to practice high-quality medicine. Compensation is write your own structure within production capabilities. Literally, it is the owner wants to find the right person and is happy to negotiate, chat through, and find the right fit. If you want autonomy and a boss that enjoys teaching, reach out to Newport Veterinary Hospital. You can email newportveterinarihospital@gmail.com. North Central Indiana, looking for an oasis in the chaos. Who isn't, right? Come join the amazing team at Fulton County Veterinary Clinic. They strive to foster a fun, fast-paced work environment while providing quality patient care. They utilize the support staff efficiently so that the doctor is available to practice medicine and do what you're trained to do in less time and paperwork, which is great. Lots of investment in new equipment and technology to support you, full-time or part-time available. Small animal and exotics are both seen there, so no ER, no on-call, no weekends, competitive salary with sign-on bonus offered, and far too many benefits to list. Go to Fulton County Veterinary Clinic. So type that in and you'll find the job posting there. Last but not least, join Watertown Animal Hospital. Personable, small animal veterinarian wanted for well-established current 5-doctor mixed animal practice in northern New York, which is an outdoors person's paradise. Again, 2 of those. So if you like the outdoors, you can look at Vermont or New York. They have plenty of support staff with 6 CSRs, 6 licensed technicians, 4 animal caretakers, 2 technical assistants, a hospital assistant, a practice manager, and a bookkeeper. Focuses on mentorship and investment on the people and the technology. That's been a strategic initiative by the leadership team. No on-call, 24-hour ER less than an hour away. Salary based on experience, but no less than $95,000. Can be straight salary, pro-sal considered. Want to discuss that with the right person. Tons of benefits. Again, too much to list. Please reach out to Watertown petcare.com for that option as well. So again, if you find a role or a job or talk to anyone and it helps you in any way, I would love to hear that feedback. So please reach out. Let me know what you're able to do. And I will continue to post these. So if you are an owner, reach out to me, let me know. And we'll go from there. And until I hit a capacity of I can't keep recording these, I want to let people know who are high quality owners around the country looking for great help. So with that, we'll talk soon. Thanks for listening to today's show. The comments made on today's show should not be taken as investment, tax, or legal advice. All comments are for educational purposes only. You should talk to your professional team before implementing anything. If you want or need financial advice, my day job and not podcasting is helping veterinarians grow their net worth. Our team is taking new clients, and we are ready to talk to you at any stage of life. Come as you are. I always say, bring the mess, right? Like if things are unorganized, that's okay. There's no prerequisites to become a client. Isaiah Douglas is a partner at Vincier Wealth Management. Isaiah is a registered investment advisor, registered with the SEC. The biggest compliment you can give me in the podcast is to share it with a friend. Reviews help the show get found, and Apple Podcast is the platform that is predominantly used for people listening to the show. If you have 3 minutes, love the show, head over to Apple Podcasts, give us an honest rating and review. It helps more people find the show. Also, the new YouTube channel is up, and I'd love to have you subscribe. Vainly, I want 100 subscribers at least. Lots more, obviously, right? But I get a vanity URL if we get to 100. That would be great. It makes it easier to find the YouTube channel as well. For all of today's links, information, head over to the veterinariansuccesspodcast.com. There you can subscribe to your favorite podcasting platform. It'll be a link to that YouTube channel I just talked about. You won't miss any other episodes, whether you listen on Spotify, whether you have some other ancillary podcast platform. Please like, subscribe, all that stuff. It certainly does help. I appreciate it. Finally, if you want more information, insights, want your voice to be heard, want to share ideas for content, say, hey, Isaiah, I want you to have this guest. I want you to talk about this topic. Go over to the Facebook group. So you can search for the Veterinarian Success Podcast on Facebook or head over to veterinariansuccesspodcast.com, scroll to the bottom about your host, click on the Facebook icon, and that'll get you in the group. But thank you so much for listening. It means a lot to me to be able to see the podcast grow and continue to impact people. So with that, until next time, we'll chat soon.